Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name is Katrina and this is I want to talk about my 5-star reads so far this year, and I have a pretty good list of them. It's the end of July, and I have a pretty good list of them, so let's get right to it. The first one I have here is Ace of Spades. It's a near perfect book. The elevator pitch for Ace of Spades is Get Out meets Gossip Girls, and then I add Make It Queer because both Chiamaka and Devin are queer characters. Devin is gay and Chiamaka is bisexual. They are the two only black students in a private school. They are at the end of their high school career, and then things start happening to them. Rumors start being spread about them. Videos of them in compromising situations gets sent to everyone in the school, posters and stuff being put in lockers and things like that. All of these things are signed with Ace. And so these students who are Devin and Chiamaka, who are totally different from each other, come together and decide to figure out who is doing these things to them. It is a great book. I wouldn't call it scary. I didn't think Get Out was scary in the sense of, I mean, we're all scared of, black people are always scared of the police and being in always situations and having to deal with the annoyance of microaggressions and like implicit bias and thinly veiled racism and things like that. It's annoying and stuff at the point. Jordan Peele's original ending for that movie where the character would have gone to jail, that would have made it a tragic story, and I'm so glad that got scrapped. And so this book, I think, handled teen angst and being the only black kids in situations and class issues, and it just handled all those situations really well while heightening the situation so that it was an enjoyable read. I gave it 5 stars. I loved it, and I was amazed that this is a debut book and that the author, I don't want to murder her name, but the author wrote this. She finished the first draft when she was a freshman in college and submitted it in her senior year, and I'm just like, what have I done with my life? The next 5-star that I have on this list is Horrorstor. I love horror stories where there's a group of people who have witty banter and they have to cooperate to get out of a situation. This is by Grady, Hendrix, and it's a story about a big box furniture store that is like a knockoff of IKEA. It is built on haunted ground, and when things start going down, these guys have to figure out a way to get out of the situation. There are real stakes. It is charming in some places. You're frustrated with some people. You can recognize some of these characters. There are really gross out situations. There's some tense action scenes, and I highly recommend it. I highly recommend anything from Grady Hendrix. Another book that I have talked about plenty of times on this channel is The Family Plot by Cherie. This is another book where it's a group of people going through a horrific situation together, and having to discuss and figure out and decide how to deal with it. This one is a group of salvagers who go to a house, a mansion actually, and they have to salvage everything, including the mansion and the 2 outer buildings on this land. And there's tons of stuff for them to get, but there's also ghosts, and they have to deal with the hauntings and the ghosts, and some of them are friendly, some of them are malevolent, and they don't talk to each other about it at first, but then they finally talk it out and realize, oh, we're all dealing with this. let's deal with this together. And so it's exciting, it's interesting, it's spooky, it's creepy. I didn't want to put the book down as I was reading it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. 5 stars. Root Magic by Royce is a sweet middle grade book about twins who are about 12 years old, and they're going through what tweens go through. And on top of that, they have to deal with figuring out why their dad is not around. They are being harassed by this white police officer who does not agree with the fact that they practice root magic. Root magic is a part of their culture and their heritage, being Gullah Geechee people in South Carolina. And the matriarch of the family, who was really teaching them, died. The grandmother dies. That's the inciting event at the very beginning of the book. Also, the little girl Jezebel is dealing with a lot of loneliness, and she doesn't feel like she's a part of anything. Her twin brother is super popular while she's not. And then to add to that, because she is really smart, she is skipping a grade. And so this upcoming school year will be the first time she's not with her brother. So she's even lonelier. And that opens her up to being friends with someone who possibly has ulterior motives than just being friends. And this little girl just has to deal with so many things. And I saw myself in her, and I see my 11-year-old in her. And I love middle grade books. I'm loving these spooky middle grade books. I think 11, 12 years old is such a pivotal time in a child's life. It was for me. It was for my eldest daughter. And I'm trying to learn lessons from myself and my eldest daughter to help my youngest daughter ease her way through this tween time. And so I'm hoping that a lot of these books will help her as well. And so they have a touch of whimsy, they have a touch of magic, they have realism, because these are Black people in the 1960s who are dealing with things. And so I gave it a 5-star. I love the book, and I listened to it, and I've gone on I've bought so many books that I'm just kind of waiting until my bank account cools off a little bit, and I'm going to buy this in hardback for the kids' shelf. Shifters in the Night was a sweet little surprise book that was released by Molly Harper from my favorite series of hers called Mystic Bayou. Mystic Bayou is this city where people who are supernatural are drawn to. There are humans there, but there is a force that seems to have drawn people there, all types of shifters and were people and all that kind of stuff. And because there's such a high group of supernatural people there, there is a government facility that has also built a facility there, and people come in through that government facility because they were initially preparing for, you know, how once this gets out, once we realize we're living with, you know, vampires and shifters and werewolves on, let's study these group of people who have been living this way for a long time, and for the most part with no problems, come up with ways to help the government then usher in openness with the rest of the country. So inevitably, as these government workers come in, they fall in love with someone in the community, and the initial guys, the people who are in the community, they all are friends. And so it's a found family sort of situation. They're welcoming, they're loving, and it's funny, it's irreverent, it's sexy. I love this series, and I normally track when they're coming out, but this was kind of a surprise drop. You can only find them on Audible, and for this series is actually part of the Plus catalog, so I don't even have to use a credit to get it. So it was like my birthday all the way around when this series came out. So I was very, very happy when this came out. Again, this is Shifters in the Night by Molly Harper. The next 5-star book was a nonfiction book called Are Prisons Obsolete by Angela Davis. It's more of like an introductory book. It's very, very small, and it, I believe, came from a talk of hers or maybe an essay, and it's just been put in book form. And it is a primer sort of on prison abolition, and the idea that abolition never ended. We've been fighting for abolition since we were slaves, and for more rights as Reconstruction went on, and Jim Crow, sharecropping, Jim Crow, redlining, voters' rights, all of these things, all the way to now, prisons and the justice system is, as Michelle Alexander says, prison it's slavery by another name, and it talks about the atrocities that happen in communities, in the court systems, and in jails. And then what do we need to do wholesale to change the situation for Black Americans, mainly Black trans people, and women actually are now the highest growing population. In Black women are the highest population of people, highest growing population of people in prisons. And so it is a family situation, it is a child situation, because women are giving birth to children shackled, and then their children are taken away. Families are broken up because the main caregiver is being taken away, and so it's a travesty. And so that was a primer, and I've gone on to some heavier books, but that was a good entryway into the ideas of, do we need prisons, or do we need to be thinking about other things? And it's very interesting to me that right now on the left there's this argument about how we brand things, and how defund the police and abolish the police are so it puts people off. But I don't know, I it's such a dire situation. How do you brand it? What do we need to do? Police reform doesn't work. It's not going to work. Prison reform is not going to work. When you look at how disgusting and corrupt the entire situation has been, and will always be, what is rebranding going to do? You just have to learn about how bad the situation is, and if your heart is open, and if your mind is open and not made up, then you'll see that that's something that needs to happen as well. So I don't want to keep going on being on the soapbox about it, but that book started me in my book learning about it. I was already thinking about it. I had already read New Jim Crow. I watched When They See Us, which was the movie that Ava DuVernay did for Netflix about the Central Park Five. And just being Black in America, that the situation is rigged against us. But even being Black, even being informed, even being well read when it comes to political things, it's still, when the numbers are put in front of you, it's still stark, and it makes me afraid for my children. And this doesn't make sense. This is a dumb thought, but I wish my ancestors had somehow figured out a way to escape to Canada, because this country is just dangerous for people who look like me and my children. So that book really affected me. I gave it 5 stars. It was very concise. It was very educational. It was very clear. It didn't try to talk down to you. It was a great book. At Your Age, Eve Brown was the next great book by Talia Hibbert. It was the last book in the Brown Sisters series. All of these girls are funny and smart and witty and neurotic and neurodivergent, and one of the sisters chronically ill and fat and dark skinned, and they find guys that they don't settle for. They're gorgeous guys who love them and support them, and this is all written with the utmost level of sexiness and humor and banter. And I would just suggest people read all 3 of those books and any other Talia Hibbert book. She writes really quirky, sexy, great romance novels. I just love it. Another book that I've talked about pretty often on this channel is Playing Nice by J.B. Delaney. It was one of my first 5 stars of the year. I read it at the beginning of the year. It worked on so many levels for me. It was a thrilling, psychological, domestic story And so it worked just by itself, but it worked really well for me because I had a very overwhelming, stressful custody issue. And while the person in this book was a full-blown psychopath or sociopath, I can't remember, the person that I was dealing with, I think, is also the same. And obviously in this book it was heightened, but the therapists and things talked a lot about what are the signs of a psychopath or a sociopath, and I was dealing with that. Obviously, like I said, just not as heightened and dramatic as you have to do for a book. And it just brought back so many memories. It was so good. But I think I still would have given it a 4 or 5, even if it wasn't such a personal book. It was so well written. It was so well researched, because he knew what he was doing. He knew, because I had been through that machine of the court systems and things like that, and the money and the lawyers and the parenting classes and all of the apparatus of custody, the mediation, all of that, the person's way of where the judges try to be, they say that they're going to be neutral, but they are played by the person who can play the game better. You're trying to be honest, but the other person is playing games. And it was so good, but it really traumatized me and took me back to my horrible situation that went on for years and years and years. The next 5-star book that I had was another middle grade book about a magical black girl named Amari in Amari and the Night Brothers. B.B. Alston is the author. Amari is a little girl whose brother goes missing and she doesn't know why. She lives in the inner city and there's all kinds of issues that come with that. But she finds out that Quentin, her brother, was a part of this secret society, and they go to a special school, and it's a magical school. And when she gets into the school, she has to deal with imposter syndrome and things like that, feeling like she doesn't belong there because she's not rich and she didn't know about magic like these other families, people who've gone there for generations in their family and things like that. And at the same time, she has to contend with trying to find her brother. I just love all of them. One thing I find is interesting is a lot of these covers have blue covers. I'm like, is there some kind of psychological thing that the publishing industry went through, where they found out that powerful looking girls in the middle, especially with these black books, powerful looking girls with big hair in a blue cover, or just any of these books. Root Magic has a bluish green cover, Amari and the Night Brothers, and then Legendborn also has a blue cover, black woman, big hair, looking powerful in the center of the thing. So I wonder if there's some kind of psychological thing going on with that. Speaking of Legendborn by Tracy Deonn, that was another 5-star. Let me read this description. It's quite long, but I'll speed it up and I'll try to kind of skip around things that I don't think are as important. After her mother dies in an accident, 16-year-old Bree Matthews wants nothing to do with her family memories or childhood home. A residential program for bright high schoolers at UNC Chapel Hill seems like the perfect escape until Bree witnesses a magical attack on her very first night on campus, a flying demon feeding on human energies. A secret society of so-called Legendborn students that hunt the creatures down, a mysterious teen mage who calls himself a Merlin and who attempts and fails to wipe Bree's memory of everything she saw. The mage's failure unlocks Bree's own unique magic and a buried memory in a hidden connection the night her mother died. Another Merlin was at the hospital. Now that Bree knows that there is more to her mother's death than what's on the police report, she'll do whatever it takes to find the truth, even if it means infiltrating Legendborn as one of their inmates. So I stopped. There's other things going on. There's a love triangle, like you have to have in a YA book. I love the fact that, of course, this character would have the right to be in an Arthurian legend group, because the average African American has 20% European blood, and if blood magic was going to happen, if some type of blood magic was being passed down from Merlin or Arthur or some kind of king or something like that, of course we would be in the line. We've been, up until now, we've been ignored in that sense. And also with this book, she not only taps into possibly some of those other types of magic, she has her own magic. Again, root magic. I think hers is hoodoo. I don't remember if it was that, but it's black magic that she's also, black people magic that she's also has access to. So that makes her doubly powerful. I love this book. Again, this and Amari and the Night Brothers, I bought 2 copies, one for me and one for my daughter, because my daughter is so hard on books. So that tells you how good these books are, and I totally enjoyed it. My daughter is reading it now as I braid her hair, and she's like, oh my God, I'm really enjoying it. And I didn't think that she'd actually pick that book up until she was a little older, because it's YA versus middle grade. So I hope that she continues with the book. Right now it's early days, but my hopes are high. The last 5-star review I have so far in the year 2021, Hood Feminism, Notes from the Women That a Movement Forgot by Mikki Kendall. This book updated the ideas of feminism in a sense that it added people into it that have been marginalized normally. So trans women, poor women, black women, Hispanic women, gay women, everyone else, you know. And if you're not intersectional with your feminist ideas, then you're not a feminist in a sense. Because if these women aren't free, women aren't free. If we can't get equal pay or higher pay for poor women, who are the majority people who are taking care of homes, what's the worth of your feminism? If we're not fighting for abortion rights and things like that for women, specifically poor women, what's the worth of your feminism? And if you're ignoring women of color, women who are trans, women who are gay, women who are poor, what can you call yourself a feminist? Can you call yourself an ally? And she talks about all of these things in the context of her life story. And so I thought that was an interesting way to talk about something in a nonfiction story, where it was like an autobiography light, but in the sense of, but just through the lens of feminism. And she also, you know, you probably get this idea by it being called hood feminism, is the idea of respectability politics. It's got a stranglehold on black people, especially old black people, and we really have to let this go. Sagging pants is not the problem in our community. A black girl wearing big gold bamboo earrings is not the problem in our community. Martin Luther King was wearing a suit when they shot him. So that's another one of the things. And then putting a lot of the onus on girls, especially black girls, who are seen as older than what they are. And women and men will, you know, put down little girls who just happen to have developing bodies. And sometimes black girls' bodies develop a little bit faster for whatever reason. And then they're called fast, or that's one of our, you know, ways of a colloquial term for somebody who's kind of putting themselves out there or growing up too fast or whatever, instead of putting the onus on the gross old man looking at the girl. And so those were some specific things that are specific to our community that I appreciated that was brought up in this book, and contributed to me giving it a 5-star. So let's just put 5 stars as our emoji if you don't have anything to say. Otherwise, if you do have something to say, let me know. What was your 5-star, your favorite 5-star book of 2021 so far? And put that down in the comment box. Let's talk, and be easy on yourself, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.